What if you had the opportunity to be a voice for the voiceless? What if you had an opportunity to take all of your research, all of your passions, all of your resources, and kind of come together with your community, with other like-minded people to be an advocate for not only marginalized animals, but also marginalized people? What would that experience feel like for you? What do you think that that impact would have on the world in which we live in? That kind of intersectional activism where like-minded people who are working on a bunch of different things kind of come together to create a better world for all marginalized individuals regardless of their species. These are some of the questions and ideas we're going to be exploring today on the Street Dog podcast, brought to you by, of course, the Street Dog Coalition. We're a national nonprofit providing free veterinary care and related services to pets of people experiencing or at risk of homelessness. I'm your host, Daria Tavana, and I'm also the Director of Development at the Street Dog Coalition. And today we are honored to welcome Dr. Cassandra Reyes to the Street Dog podcast. Dr. Reyes is an associate professor of criminal justice at Westchester University, where she has been shaping future leaders since 2009. With over 13 years of experience as a bilingual probation and parole officer in New Jersey, as well as roles in corrections, she brings a unique perspective on the intersection of criminal justice and animal welfare. Dr. Reyes is also a passionate advocate for marginalized communities, including BIPOC and LGBTQIA individuals. And she developed the first known animal cruelty course in U.S. criminal justice programs. So we are so thrilled to have her here today to explore the intersection of criminal justice, animal welfare, and social justice. Welcome, Cassandra!
Thank
Woo!
you for having me.
Coolest person alive. Ah,
Thank
you're so welcome. And I feel like you don't know me well enough to know how genuine and sincere I am in giving you that title. But for years before I started working on animal welfare causes, I actually spent a lot of time working on criminal justice causes. I worked at a criminal justice nonprofit where we provided communication training and tools for activists and artists who were working on criminal justice reform and immigration reform. So criminal justice reform has like a huge place in my heart, and I'm really, really excited to have you here on the podcast today.
Awesome.
Yeah, let's just get this party started. You have such a fascinating background, and there's such a variety of things we could talk about. But why don't you get us started by letting us know how your experience, maybe tell us a little bit about your experience working in criminal justice, and how did that ultimately shape your passion for animal welfare?
Okay. Well, to start it off, even before I got out of high school or anything like that, um, my grandmother used to remind me that my first invisible friend was a dog. It wasn't even a person. So I've loved animals my entire life. I actually wanted to be a veterinarian when I started in my undergraduate studies. When I finally got a job in the criminal justice system, I started out as a delinquency specialist. I worked with juveniles that were second-time offenders, and then I moved into being a probation officer bilingual. As a probation officer bilingual, I worked in the criminal division, writing pre-sentence investigations. I didn't really see a lot of correlation there with animals, but when I got into juvenile probation, I would see times where juveniles would come in. I remember one case specifically, a juvenile brought in a puppy. It looked like a pit bull puppy, and he was pinching his rear end, trying to make him bark and snarl a little bit. Um, and then I remember being out on the streets of Camden. I would see people walking dogs with like a heavy chain and like a weight around their neck, not even thinking about what they were being trained to do, and probably they were being trained to dogfight at that aspect. As I moved around in Camden as a probation officer, I also worked in the domestic violence unit. And I would see people coming in for a temporary restraining order, a final restraining order, and they would talk about their pets. And at the time in New Jersey, pets weren't really considered a part or being protected by protection from order, um, protection from abuse orders.
Mm.
But I would see them being included because they are considered property. This day, they're considered property across the United States. When I went back to school in 2003 to work on my master's and my doctorate, I really wanted to focus on animal cruelty because I also experienced 2.5 years of my life in a violent relationship. Luckily, my cat wasn't harmed during this time, but I thought about the times where I was scared when he was hiding from what was going on and those things. And then after seeing it while I was a probation officer, I knew that there had to be some kind of a relationship there with regard to how people treat each other and with how they treat animals. So during my master's program and my PhD, I wanted to focus on the relationship between animal cruelty and violence between people.
Mm.
Well, at the time, it wasn't really accepted. It was accepted in sociology, psychology, and other areas, but criminology really didn't have a focus on animal cruelty. So it was kind of, I was walking outside the box of a lot of my cohort. So I continued doing that. And then when I went to Westchester in 2009, I was offered an opportunity to start the course in 2000, the spring of 2010 of the animal cruelty class. And at that time, Michael Vick was still playing for the Eagles. And I tried desperately to get him to come in and talk to my class because I wanted to understand what he was doing and
Yeah.
why he did what he did. But unfortunately, I received a form letter. He's doing a lot of other activities. He's doing a lot of volunteerism. Thank you for your organization for reaching out. And I had already found out that the Eagles used to use our football field as one of their practice fields. I'm thinking, why can't he just come in and talk to my class? But it never, unfortunately, never came into being. Fast forwarded to 2017, I had the opportunity to become a volunteer with the Humane Society of the United States. And of course, I jumped on the chance as soon as I could. And I've been a volunteer with them ever since. It's called a Humane Policy Leader Volunteer. And basically, what we do is we lobby people on the state level and on the federal level to support and thank them for supporting bills that are help with anti-animal cruelty legislation. And I actually just received an award in April for the Volunteer of the Year for 2023. Received citations from my state representatives and senators for that. And it was just a humbling experience. But this whole time, I brought it into the classroom. My students are going into the criminal justice field in different aspects. And when I first started the program or the course, they didn't really understand why it's so important to pay attention to how people are treating their animals. And by the time they leave my class, they have a better understanding. They could use it in their future careers. My students have had opportunities to lobby themselves with our legislators. And that's probably one of the most memorable things I've done with regard to it was during the pandemic. Um, some of my students had an opportunity to meet with our senator and a representative via Zoom and lobby about animal cruelty. And they were able to present the bills themselves because we talk about bills in every semester in my class. And it's just an amazing experience to bring my students into this. And they're really getting into it. In fact, my students just did videos yesterday in both of my classes, my sections, on different legislation that's pending right now. So it just kind of mixed and matched and blended and weaved itself right into it from my background up into where I am right now.
There is so much to chat about and unpack here. First and foremost, I appreciate you being vulnerable and giving us some insight into your past relationships. I know that a lot of the clients that we have either escaped violent relationships, gender-based violence at home, or are currently living through violent relationships. And
Mhm.
oftentimes their pets are the only thing that they feel connected to,
Mhm.
safe with. So I just want to acknowledge and thank you for sharing that. And I know that a lot of our audience members really see themselves in you, and can only hope to have the impact that you've had. And it's also really fascinating to me, as someone who bleeds green, go Eagles, that that, you invited Michael Vick, who, for those who don't know, was charged uh, with dog fighting, and that is like just the quick and easiest way to describe the horrific actions that he spearheaded. And I just want to acknowledge how much I appreciate that, it seems as if you were trying to kind of reach across the aisle here and bring someone in who has had experience uh, being cruel to animals, and giving them a platform to maybe share what was going on in their mind and in their life and in their heart. So it is no surprise to me that Michael Vick did not take you up on that on that invitation, but pretty amazing of you to invite him. And it is, I think, so interesting to think about the intersection of all of these different things that you're working on, because these issues as they exist in our society, they don't exist in a silo, and they
Mhm.
surely can't be solved in a silo. So at the Street Dog Coalition, one of our biggest core values is compassionate activism.
Mhm.
And we are always trying to, think about the lives on both ends of the leash, the
Mhm.
animal and the person that we're trying to serve. And I'm curious to know, and I'm sure you know better than anyone, that being an activist is being a constant learner and a constant student of the world, right? So
Yeah.
how do you think that me, my colleagues at the Street Dog Coalition, our listeners, how, as advocates of marginalized communities, can we better integrate justice and equity and animal protection in today's social movements?
I think that getting to know the population who's mostly affected by it really helps.
Mm,
Also, engaging the legislators. I'm not a politician by any means, but it's so important. They're the ones who make the laws outside of court cases. And it's really important that the voices are heard for these different types of platforms. I'm lucky from where we live, our representative, our senators, everybody's very animal and people friendly. Well, that really sounds weird, but they're very supportive of people who are going through hard times, and the animals are being abused along the way as well. And getting to know them and putting a face to just not a letter or an email or something like that, but really getting to know them, it really helps. In fact, I actually had the opportunity last month to speak at a press conference with regard to a bill that was pending for including animals in protection from abuse orders in Pennsylvania. And since then, it has been signed into law. I believe it was last week. It's now a law in Pennsylvania that animals are now protected under those orders. I think we're the 39th state, and including DC, to be involved with that.
wow.
So it's really important to get out there and being with like-minded people, because one person can make a difference, but if you have a group of people going and talking to people and bring it out here into social media platforms, it really helps bring in more people and it impacts whatever you're trying to fight for.
Okay, so the power in numbers, that's what I'm
Yes.
hearing here. Make a fuss online. That is one of my favorite things to do. And I know, as myself, someone who's been involved in like demonstrations, sometimes that in-person demonstration, when you're there, feels like, oh, like people are walking by, like nobody cares. There's not a lot of us here. But then we like take the images and the videos from that experience, and we just blast them on social media, and we encourage people to share them and use hashtags. And before we know it, this small demonstration that people were kind of just walking by really explodes online. So it's interesting, as I'm sure you've experienced over the years, how the internet, while it is oftentimes a source of frustration, can sometimes be helpful as well. Uh, so this is okay. This is all really good advice. And I'm curious, so a lot of our audience members, they are volunteers.
Mhm.
A lot of them are student volunteers. They go to veterinary school. A lot of them are studying social work. It's actually quite amazing how many young people offer their time and their talent to our mission. And
Mhm.
I know you have a lot of experience with younger people as well. So I'm saying I'm saying younger people as if you know, I think I'm aging myself here. But anyway, and now I'm laughing because our friend Tim at Harmony Dog Rescue commented and said Eagles with a thumbs down.
Aw.
That's okay, Tim. That's okay. I'm gonna come to Pittsburgh, give you a piece of my mind. Uh, but I digress here. So, Cassandra, can you share where I was going with this is can you share a memorable experience from your time educating young people and students about animal cruelty and its broader impact on society? Was there like a really special student or a really special moment that made everything kind of feel worth it, or maybe made you feel kind of hopeful for the future?
In addition to the when they met with our senator and our representative online during the Zoom time, I have a couple students that are coming to mind right now. One is now a canine officer in Pennsylvania, and I remember his group was working on the shark finning bill, which has since been passed. And he made stickers for everybody, or ma I think they're actually magnets that he made. No, they were stickers, and he made it for everybody to give out because they was encourage them to spread the awareness. And then another student was working on the pigeon shoots, which is something we're still fighting in Pennsylvania. And she went out and actually got the discs that they use in disc shooting or clay pigeon shooting. And she got them and brought them into the whole class. And it's just the impact and seeing how engaged they were with this, it just was so amazing. I've done so many different things with them, either making videos or them making posters or flyers or just talking to other people. And it just makes me feel so good that they're actually getting engaged with this because it's an elective course and they're self-selecting to be in the course. But a lot of the students that I've seen, and I've taught over 1,000 students at this point in this course, they're very passionate about animals and they don't realize this is going on. And I've had students come up to me, and actually, one said to me yesterday, he was working on a cat declawing bill that's pending in Pennsylvania. He said, we were going to declaw my cat, but now after did all this research, we're not going to declaw our cat now, which is amazing.
It's awesome.
And one student, in a video I showed, she came up to me afterwards. She's like, I was going to go to Chick-fil-A afterwards, and you know what? I'm not going to go to Chick-fil-A now.
Ah,
It's just little things off and on throughout all these years. It's amazing how the
oh, that
students
is so
engage
cool.
with it.
Oh man. Oh man. So you're telling me that one cat has their claws and that Chick-fil-A has one fewer customer? Like that for me, having no involvement in that at all, that's very satisfying to me personally. So I can only imagine. Wow. Okay, that's amazing. And your resume is incredibly impressive. Like you said, you've moved thousands of students through this course, and I know that your reach extends far and wide. And yeah, we're very lucky to have you in the animal
Thank you.
rights community. Absolutely,
Thank you.
absolutely. And I'm curious to know, so if someone, I'm gonna say young person again, if a young person or a student is interested in, especially in this political climate, especially this post-election
Mhm.
landscape, where both everything has changed and like nothing has actually changed at
Mhm.
all. What are some actionable steps that universities, and maybe even students at universities can take to really further engage themselves in the fight against animal cruelty on maybe a local level?
I would recommend if they have any student groups that they can maybe form to do this. I know that there was one when I was in the Taking Action for Animals um, conference in Arlington. A student had mentioned to me that they had a student group that was similar to what you're explaining. They could take actions like that. And she was a grad student, I believe, and they had that kind of a student activity. Also find out what kind of organizations are in the area. I know with the Humane Society, they're all over and they're always looking for volunteers to do like-minded work. And I've seen a lot of students who were volunteers through that organization in the, wow, 6 years, 7 years that I've been with them. Um, talk to other people in the area, talk to the shelters and see what maybe they need or other agencies that help people and animals in their communities and see what they could do, maybe go out and do community service or whatever is needed for these organizations. And again, even if it's just one person, they're still doing a great job of, getting it out there and pushing it forward to help with the people who are voiceless or the animals who are voiceless and people who just need the help, and might not be seen as might be seen as individual invisible sometimes, that really getting that word out helps a lot.
I appreciate that. I think that, like you said, there are so many different community groups, organizations, student-led
Hmm.
circles
Hmm.
that already exist where people are already kind of, fighting for the rights of animals, fighting for the rights of our, marginalized neighbors. So to kind of step into that circle in and of itself, I remember when I first went to like my first vegan animal rights meeting. I'm making it sound so secretive. It was for the organization, the Humane League,
Okay.
actually.
Hmm.
And I was interested in just getting involved in some kind of activism.
Hmm.
And I remember when I first stepped into one of their community meetings, I felt this sense of relief. I was like, oh God, my people, like finally, people that like are angry about this and care about this and not only want to create a better world for animals, but have steps that we can take together to create that world.
Hmm.
So I just want to encourage any of our supporters who may not have taken that first step to simply look up what kind of different organizations either at your university or in your community that are doing this work, and don't be afraid to kind of put yourself out there
Hmm.
and go to one of these meetings alone. You might just make a friend. So I really appreciate you encouraging our audience to do that as well. And my final question for you, Cassandra, is this is something that I've just been kind of thinking about while having this conversation. And I know that studying animal cruelty and dedicating so much of your life to making the world a more compassionate place for animals involves a lot of, um, looking at a lot of undercover footage, looking at a lot of images and being physically in scenarios and situations where animals are
Hmm.
being abused right in front of you. So my question for you is, what advice would you give to somebody who has either experienced witnessing that kind of cruelty through research or in real life, or is maybe hesitant about getting involved in this work because, like, out of sight, out of mind, they don't want to see that? How have you navigated that over your career? And I'm actually asking for myself.
Oh, absolutely. I'll be honest, a lot of those videos are still really hard for me to see.
Yeah.
And I'm very selective in what I show my students, because it's out there for them to look at whenever they want to. For me, quite honestly, the hardest ones are the crush videos, which are still going on. Um, if they are somebody who's witnessed it or has been in a place where it happens a lot, um, as we know, there are some, like whether it's doing experimentation, whether it's, the euthanization of otherwise healthy animals because of overcrowding issues, talk to somebody. It's not something that I would have been able to deal with alone. Luckily, I've been able to I have a good support network to talk to people of what I've seen. Um, and I hate to say this really sounds bad, but sometimes I kind of get not used to it, but it's not normalized, but it happens so much. Um, but talking it out and writing about it or just speaking out about it, I think it really helps. The memories will still be there, unfortunately, but at least by getting it out of your thoughts and working with that, I think it helps as well.
That that's such That's such great advice. I think you're right. Finding an outlet of self-expression for yourself. And this kind of goes back to the answer that you gave for to my previous question, like
Mhm.
having a network of people
Mhm.
who who I actually want to say, like, for me at least, it's the network is twofold. It's having a network of people that are equally as enraged about this and that
Mhm.
understand your frustration. And that in itself I have found to be very, very helpful. But then
Mhm.
also, like, having a network of people that where you can go to, like, I do yoga and I have a lot of yoga friends who I know are like-minded, but we're not always talking about animal abuse.
Mhm.
It's really helpful for me to also have another community of people where I can kind of I realize it's a privilege, but just kind of unplug from
Mhm.
that world, if only for like an hour moving my body. So I think that's such great advice. And I want to encourage our listeners to have a network of like-minded people, but to also have an activity that maybe has nothing to do with advocating for animals that brings you joy. And that's not my own advice. I think that's advice I had a mentor give me
Mhm.
years and years and years ago that has really made me a happier person so that when I go back to my animal activism, I can feel a little more grounded and clear-headed. So,
Absolutely. And if I could
yes,
add something to that too, because
please.
walking around my one of my cats is walking around me. If you have pets at home or pets that are in the proximity or animals, it's always great to go and just cuddle with them and pet them and to bring the stress down of what you're witnessing or, just having a bad day or anything like that is so important. And they seem to know when something's wrong as well, which is amazing.
Oh man, that's actually the best advice ever. I'm surprised that we didn't think of that immediately. Yes, I totally agree. I know that there are many listeners we have right now who are probably petting their fur babies as we speak. And Cassandra, I could talk to you about this all day. I think this is like the most excited and chatty I have been on a
Oh,
podcast in quite some time. So I want to thank you,
thank
Cassandra,
you.
so much for taking the time to chat with me today. This has been a total dream come true. You already know I think you are a total badass.
Oh, thank
And
you.
absolutely, we are so, so, so lucky to have you as an advocate for animals, for marginalized communities. You could be studying anything and you could be a professor of anything. And the fact that you chose to be a voice for animals is really inspiring to me and inspiring to our community of compassionate activists. So thank you, Cassandra, for
Thank
taking
you
the
again.
time. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, before I let you go, are there any projects you're working on you want to share with people, or maybe a project that a peer of yours is working on that you want to kind of plug?
Um, well, I'm working on something that's completely unrelated to that,
What is it?
a community corrections book
Oh, cool. Oh,
for people who work
cool.
in the field
Oh my
with adult
gosh.
colleagues.
Oh, that's awesome. I thought you were going to say a cookbook or
Yeah,
something.
no, no, that would never happen with me. I'm not that talented in the kitchen.
Me neither. Me neither. Okay, we love a community corrections book. You'll have to come back on the podcast when it's done and it's out there and chat
Perfect.
about it because
Perfect.
you are a member of our street dog family now, Cassandra,
Thank you.
and you're so welcome. And I hope that you have the best holiday, the
Absolutely.
best
Well,
tofurkey day.
exactly.
And we got to bring you back on the podcast. But in the meantime, Cassandra, again, thank you so much, and thank you so much to everyone who tuned in today. It's always a pleasure to connect with you, and until next time,
Bye-bye. Thank
thank
you.
you.
Bye.